Right, so the latest census results show that the South African population grew to 62 million in 2022. Gauteng remained the province with the highest population at 15 million, whilst the Northern Cape has the smallest population at 1.3 million. Now, the Western Cape has moved from being the fifth largest province in terms of population size back in 1996 to being the third largest in 2022. But is South Africa's economy growing fast enough to satisfy the growth in its population? Let's discuss this further. We're going to be joined by Professor Jannie Rossouw, Professor at Wits Business School. Prof, good afternoon. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to participate this afternoon.
Absolute pleasure, Prof. At this point, we want to unpack the latest information emerging from the census that was released. Perhaps let's start with the role of the census data as a vital source for planning for government regarding service delivery, tracking trends and population sizes, amongst many others.
Yes, indeed. The population census data is used to plan new schools, to plan new public facilities like hospitals, and please, at my age, also to plan new old age homes. So from that perspective, it informs planning decisions. And to the extent that the data is incorrect, it implies that wrong planning decisions will be taken and wrong channeling of funds will take place.
Prof, thank you for that context. I alluded to in the introduction that there are concerns amongst some that the growth of the economy is not consistent or aligned with that of the population. I suppose it's also about which theory you're employing, Malthusian or countering that. What are you observing on that front, perhaps in keeping up with the demands of South Africa's reality?
Well, in short, I've been warning about this problem probably for the last 5 or 6 years. Our economy is growing roughly at 1% per annum. Our population growth rate over the last decade was 1.8% per annum. So with 1% economic growth per annum, 1.8% population growth per annum, it simply means that on a per capita basis, we are all getting poorer. And that explains why we have a very serious unemployment problem in South Africa. Our population grows faster than the rate at which we can create new jobs in a low-growing economy. So the solution really is to get different government policies that allow the private sector the necessary scope and necessary deregulation to start businesses, to get the economy growing again, to get people employed.
Well, Prof, in a twofold question, perhaps you could speak to what a viable political economy is going to be for South Africa from here on two. And second to that, with the concentration of different people in different provinces, I wonder if you could speak to the issue of inclusivity, the economic logic of towns and cities at this point, and whether that is in line with what's needed. Do we need to explore the diversification of capital accumulation in other ways? Help us understand that.
Well, in short, it's obvious after a decade of low growth, the country is in a low growth trap. We've been in this trap since December 2013. So we've been, I call it a slump, since December 2013. You can look that up in the Reserve Bank statistics. It means that the government's policies of the last 10 years, with an increasing socialist tendency, simply did not deliver the desired results. Of course, we had the problems of state capture and corruption, and we have difficulty overcoming those difficulties, but the government needs to accept that its policies simply didn't work. We also see it in respect of the shortfall of the National Economic Development Plan. So from that perspective, we cannot continue as we've continued up to now. Government should sit down, rethink its policies to get economic growth back in the system. I also need to make the point, and I hope this is what you alluded to in your question, of course, is that the census data will also inform the distribution of funds from central government to provinces, because amongst others, that is informed by the spread of the population. So those provinces that had more rapid population growth over the last 10 years will have to get a bigger fiscal allocation from central government going forward to cater for the growth in population over the past decade. I hope I've understood the second part of your question well.
Yes, Prof, you really did. I actually wanted to understand, just as we conclude this conversation, given the census that had been put forth and the data emerging, what were some of the coverage and content errors that you would have wanted to mitigate against in the future? There were some concerns about exclusionary census questions as well in regards to gender. Any concerns on that front?
Well, my major concern is the large undercounting. I, for one, was not counted in the census, so I think officially I no longer exist, although I have to pay taxes. I was just not counted. So the undercounting is a major concern. And of course, the undercounting is a function of the crime problem in South Africa. People simply don't open their houses. People simply don't talk to strangers because they're afraid of crime. And it's very easy to fraudulently get hold of a census enumerator's uniform. So for that reason, people steered away from being counted, and the government will really have to think about this very seriously before they embark on a next census to make it more attractive and more safe for people to be counted. That's my one concern. My other concern is the number of immigrants in South Africa. I feel that is a gross undercounting. Again, my view is other ways will have to be found to look at the number of immigrants in South Africa. I just cannot accept that it's less than 5% of the South African population.
Prof, there are more questions than answers at this point, perhaps as we make sense of the data that obviously has emerged on the back of the release of the census. But thank you for your time with us on the SABC and for weighing in on that chat. We're looking at population growth and economic development. Professor Jannie Rossouw, Professor at Wits Business School, weighing in and helping us make sense of those numbers.